Right. So, as far as uh, as far as the Python basics are concerned, because in the last two sessions I've shown you an example, a basic hello world example on Python. Along with that, whenever yesterday I have discussed with you, of course, means day before yesterday, whenever we discussed about the Python basics, like what are the different keywords we'll be using in Python, right? So all that part we discussed in the previous session. Now, one of the important concept called syntax is what something I'm going to discuss in today's session, because what are the syntaxes are we going to use for any of the project? Because when we are working on any project, there are some syntaxes we have to know, because when we work for any program, because if you remember when I explained you about SQL, if you remember, I have shown you some syntaxes in context to delete, update, all that. If you see that in Excel, in MySQL Workbench, if you see, yesterday I have shown you what are the different syntaxes which are available, right? So all that I have discussed, shown you in the last two last sessions when I discussed about SQL. So either if you write any queries for any any application like SQL or something like, or else whenever we want to work on any application programming, either it can be Python or it can be Java, right? It can be of any programming language, of course. Syntaxes plays a vital and important role. So syntaxes give you a standard outfit for any program or a logic, whatever we want to write uh, for any functionality, right? So if the syntaxes was not clear, for example, in the last session to last session, day before yesterday, when I explained you, whenever I have written a code using this print command in Python, if you see even a full stop or asterisk symbol or exclamatory mark, right? So even that also counts you a lot, right? So if you are missing that, not to use it automatically, it impacts on the error, right? So it gives you an error message when you are working on the code. So it's always important for us to know about what are the different syntaxes which are used in the Python. That's what something which we have been known with. So there are different syntaxes, something like values, functions, comments, right? So all these things are something which normally we want to use it. So normally there are three different syntaxes, three to four different syntaxes we can use. Uh, in the comments, like either it can be operators or something like. So there are three to four syntaxes we need to know. In that, among that, the first one is called values. This is the first one. And second one is called functions. Second one is called functions. The third one is called comments. And fourth one is called operators. Okay, these are the four different syntaxes which normally we use whenever we are working on the syntaxes, right? So values majorly define whatever the kind of value are we are going to provide for a particular string or a particular float or a boolean value, right? So for example, here you can see there is a value item we have taken as far as the keywords are concerned, right? So either it can be string, it can be data type can be a string, which consists of text value, or else it can be an integer, which nothing but which doesn't have any decimals for that particular numeric, or else it can be a float value, which way has a number value, which has a decimal value as well, or else it can be boolean like true or false or something like that to impart the logic, all that. So whenever we are writing down any kind of value, whenever we are going to write any kind of value and all that, so values is what something which we have to see, either it can be for a string, or it can be for or it can be a float value, it can be boolean value, all that. So generally end of the day, what is that we need to know is to know about what are the different values which normally we write it. Now, whenever we talk about the values, generally here we use the quotation marks, right? So for example, quotation marks, because in the code, if you see, so this is how generally the quotation marks I have used, right? So here, let's say if you want to highlight a value, like for example, customer name. So if you want to write down the customer name must be written in the quotations. That is required, right? So for example, string. So what is string? String nothing but a alphabetical value. For example, customer name. Customer name is a string, for example. Okay. So when you are mentioning the customer name, generally customer name should be having the quotation marks. That is required. So when I'm talking about this is that I'm talking about when we are using a string. Again, I'm repeating. String nothing but which is having a text value, right? That's what we call it as a string. This is what generally example you can see, right? So this is an example I can give. So example is this. What is the example here, right? So customer name. Let's say, for example, you're writing down the customer name. Customer name can be put in the quotations. That's what generally the example is what something which we have to, which we can write when it comes to the value, all that, right? So here we use the quotation marks and all that around string. Okay, this is what generally the value stands for. So when we are going to write a syntax for a particular code, when we are mentioning something relating to the text value, means if there is any text value we are mentioning for some reason, right? So whenever we are mentioning the text value, etc. So text value, you have to write in a form of code where you must be mentioning the quotation marks. That is important because if you are missing in mentioning the quotation marks, the code will be shown as an error, because in the last sessions also I told you very clear, when you are writing a programming, it's always important, even a quotations or a full stop, or it can be a comma, or it can be exclamatory mark, or it can be an asterisk symbol, right? Each and every point is important, right? So even though you are missing one thing, automatically, even sometimes spaces also. Sometimes when we are writing down the code, we might require to give some spaces. Sometimes we don't need it. Okay, space is not required when we are mentioning it. So these are also countable, right? So even for example, if you are mentioning any, for example, if you are mentioning any text value, right? So any text value and all that. So or else if you are giving any decimals and all that. So decimals is consists of in between you can see an dot, right? So full stop I can say, right? So full stop is where it differentiates between the value. For example, 346.99. Okay, 346 is a value. Decimal which is having 0.99 is a decimal which is an extension to that. So this is where generally the inverted commas or quotations and the quotation marks is what something which normally we use whenever we are working on the string, right? So whenever we are taking string and all that. At the same time, second point, right? The second point I'm writing. So here and also we use decimals, right? So we use decimal points, I can say. So we use decimal points, something like this, right? So you know, right? So what is decimal point means? Dot, full stop, right? So that's what generally decimal point is, which will be used to turn an integer into float. Okay, that's what generally it was consists of. Let's say, for example, what is integer here? Integer nothing but a value. Let's say, for example, as an example, I'm taking, right? So 346, right, is an integer. Okay. So when it will be having a float value 346.7654, I'm just giving you the rough figure. Okay. For example. right? So let's say, for example, 0.76 we have given. So if you want to differentiate these, right? So this is what is called float. Okay, this is what generally the float value is. Float value is like numeric you are having. Numeric, for example, numeric value, which is called integer, we call it as integer is considered, and we'll be mentioning the integer based on 346. It's an integer we have taken. But if you want to extend this integer to the float value, we have to provide a dot in between. Okay, so that is where generally the value and all everything comes into picture. Now, when it comes to the Boolean part, because in the third one is about Boolean, you can see, right? Integer, float, and as well as the Boolean. When you talk about the data type here, Boolean is also there, right? So, so Boolean can only be a true or false, means if else condition, right? True or false, right? So, which is greater than, lesser than, right? So for that, you don't require any, you don't see any kind of syntaxes on it, right? So for example, yes or no, right? True or false, greater than or lesser than, right? So for example, 100 greater than 0 greater than so and so, 100 greater than, right? So that's how generally this values and all everything is what something which we have to be mentioned. So whenever we are going to write any kind of values, right? So any values in context to the syntaxes, whatever we are writing, it's always important for us about what are the different values are we going to mention here. Means we are using some quotation marks when we are representing a customer name around strings and all that. At the same time, we use some decimal points and all everything, which will be turned into a float value. Like for example, 346 is an integer, which if you say text value, numerical value, uh, integer we can also call as a numerical value in simple terms, I'm saying. At the same time, when you are going to give any Boolean value and all that, so there will be point in between where it differentiates between the numerical value with the other extension. Whatever the extension point, so and so, so and so, right? So where you are maintaining, which is where generally we call it as float. Now, when you talk about functions, okay, the first one in terms of the syntaxes, whenever you are going to write, is what generally we call it as functions, values. Values nothing but this, right? So or inverted means quotation marks, or if you are mentioning some full stop, right? So all these things are comes under the values part. Now when it comes to the functions, right? So what are the functions are we going to mention, right? So that's where generally, so whatever the brackets are we using like this, okay? For example, this is how whatever the kind of brackets are we going to use. This is where generally we are going to call it as functions, so that you are specifying the parenthesis of a particular code, whatever the code we are going to use and all. So this parenthesis and all everything is what something we are writing when you're writing down the function. For example, in the last code I have shown you, right? So print, wherein bracket has started hello world, right? So even though we have quotation marks from the starting to beginning, but end of the day, that was started with starting bracket and ended with the ending bracket. So the starting and as well as ending brackets and double brackets and all everything is called parenthesis, right? So generally is what generally we call it as parenthesis is. So here we use parenthesis, right? So parenthesis means, like for example, whatever the brackets are we going to use, right? So these are all different brackets, right? So what are the brackets are we going to use and all everything is what we generally we call it as parenthesis, right? So for example, after the name, okay, uh, to use a function, right? Okay, this is what generally we call it as functions are all about, right? So when you are going to write any kind of function, so whatever the kind of parenthesis we are using after the name to use the function, means whatever the function you are going to write, after the name, whatever that we are going to use, right? So what are the brackets are we going to use and all everything. So all these things are considered and all these things are called as functions. Okay, this is in context to the name we are going to mention or something like all that stuff. Now, at the same time, for example, if you want to add a parameter, okay. For example, if you want to add a parameter between the uh, parameters, okay, if needed, right? So that's where generally we call it as prints and all, right? For example, you want to mention the print command, right? So print is a command we are going to use. So print is a function or a command you are mentioning. So whenever we are going to mention the print commands and all, whenever we are writing down this, so we are using a parameter between the parentheses if needed. For example, whenever we are working on the print, like say, for example, here you are writing it as print, right? So this is where you are going to start this, right? So this is how generally print function, I can say, to print command or print function. That's the best thing you can also understand this as a function or a command. So this is how generally the functions are being used. So whatever the parentheses are we going to use when you're writing down a logic for a particular code, what was writing by us, right? So whether we are using a whether you are using a text value or something like whatever that we are going to write down here, all these things are comes under functions. That's what. But values, as I have told you, that the values and all everything were represented using the quotation marks and all, etc. All these things here. The next thing is about comments, right? So this is where generally third one in context to the syntaxes and all everything are comes under the comments and all that. Generally, when we are going to write any comments and all, for example, if you want to write any kind of single line comments, or if you want to write any kind of multi-line comments or something like that. So for example, you want to use it. So when you want to write any kind of comments and all, there is a symbol called hash. Hash symbol will be given. For example, if you want to mention about value and variable, for example, right, you want to mention about values and variables. Values and variables, if you want to write in code, it's always important for you to mention with the hash symbol. That's where generally hash symbol comes into picture. But of course, generally we call it as hash symbol. But when it comes to the programming language and all everything, that is what generally we call it as octothorpe. Right? Octothorpe will be there. So octothorpe means whatever the hash symbol are we going to use. All these things are used for the comments. Right? So here we use an octothorpe, right? So which is called hash symbol, right? Whatever the hash symbol is called octothorpe to start a single line comment. It means, for example, if you are going to write any kind of single line comments or something like, generally this is where generally we enter it. So for example, let me write down the example. Right? For example, we can write down like, for example, hash values and variables. Okay, this is a single line comment. Or else, for example, hash operators. Okay, or else, for example, hash functions. Right. So this is how generally the comments are we going to write. So do remember when we are going to write a hash symbol, which is called octo thorpe and all. So this is something we'll be writing when you are writing down a single comment, single line comment you are going to write. That is where in when generally this octothorpe and all everything is being used, right? So it's not multi-line comment because multi-line comments means multiple lines of comments and all everything you are writing multi-line comments and all. But when we are using a single line comment, whenever we are writing down the comments and all, this is where generally this hash, which is called octothorpe and all everything, are being used. Next, if, for example, next one, right? So next one about this is about single line comment. For example, uh, if we want to write multi-line comment, okay. For example, if you want to write multi-line line comment and all that, here we use triple quotes. Okay, around this. This is where generally triple quotes means, for example, like this. Okay, this is where generally the triple quotes are considered as. So whenever we are going to write any kind of comment, which is a multi-line comment, this is not one comment. When you want to write any kind of multi-line comments or something like, this is where generally this will be used to describe the code or something like, right? So if you want to write down any kind of code or something like, right? So this is where it is being used. For example, I'll give you an example to you so that you will be understood well. Right? For example, mm, hmm, for example, use right comments means this is the multi-line. Okay, to describe your code. Okay, at the same time, each single line below is a statement. Okay, for example, right? So this is where you have written. So what we can do, we can finish it up with this. Right, so we can finish up with this is how generally the codes and all everything are what something we are going to write. So when you want to write an example for a single line comment, whatever the symbol, we are calling it as hash, which is in symbol, which is called as octothorpe, is what something we use it. But when you're writing multiple lines of comments, like for example, this is the comment, right? Use comments to describe the code. Each single line below is a statement, right? So these are a multi-line statement because there is no one statement, one line statement, multiple lines of statement we are writing. So whenever we are going to write multiple lines of statement and all that, this is where generally this is being used, whatever the triple quotes we talked about, right? So triple quotes is simple for you to understand. So there is no much difficult for you guys to understand all that. So this is all something which normally we call it as comments, all that. Now, when we are talking about syntaxes, we discussed about the values, means values where quotation marks, right? So when you are using any decimal and all, right? So point or a dot symbol, whatever we are going to give, all these are comes under values. When it comes to the functions and all that, so whatever the parentheses are we going to use, brackets. In simple words, you to say multiple brackets, double brackets or single brackets, all these things are comes under functions. But when it comes to the comments and all that, so when you are going to write any single kind of comment, this is where hash symbol is being used. But when it comes to the Python code, whenever we want to discuss in the language of Python or code language, we don't call it as hash symbol. We call it as generally octothorpe. That's what it is. Next, if you want to write any multiple lines of codes and all, triple quotes and all, everything are being used. So these are the major ones. Apart from that, one more is called operators. Oh, no, I'll tell you. 1 minute. Values, functions, comments. Next one is called operators. Okay. So next one is about all about operators and all that. Generally, what are operators? Operators nothing but Hmm. So operator is nothing but, for example, A equal to B, for example, right? So let's say, for example, A equal to B, right? So generally there are different set of variables where we are doing for different things. For example, you want to use any kind of calculations. This is where, because in the beginning times also I told you, right? So if there are any calculations you want to make, so you want to add any kind of two different numbers, multiplications, right? So all these things are comes under this part. Means, for example, A equal to B, right? So there are two different variables. So these two different variables are what generally we are using. This is where generally these variables and all everything were coming into picture. Whatever the set of variables are we going to use, all these things are comes under the variables and all that. So this is where are we going to use it. Right. So this is where generally A equal to B, right? So A equal to B is one of the operator wherein we can use it, right? So A equal to B, or else, for example, A plus B, right? So for example, A plus B, right? So A plus B you want to use. So this is not something only for, I'm talking about variable, right? So value. So this value can be anything. Again, you can go back. Okay, value nothing but this, right? It can be a data type, right? For example, it can be an integer, it can be anything. Okay, it can be true or false, something like A equal to B, A plus B, or A minus B, right? So A divided by B, right? So all these things, right? So this can be even for a numeric. This can be even a text value, I can say, or else it can be a numeric. For example, 1 plus 2. It's a calculation. Or else it can be a 2 minus 4 minus 2. Okay. Or else it can be 6 divided by 5. Okay. Into 100 or something like, okay. Something of that sort. Or else if you want to do 6 into 5. Okay. For example, 6 into 5. So these are all something we call it as what we call these are all something we call it as numerical value. What are the numerical value are going to give? This is all something which we call it as numerical value, which is called integer, in fact. Okay. Integer, in fact. Or else we can use some float number also here, right? So float number can also be added here. Let's say, for example, 111.2.5 minus 110.3. Okay, this is minus, I'm saying. Or else 213.4 plus 786.43. Okay, right. So this is how it is. Or else it can be a multiplication. 766 0.56 into 654 point. I'm just giving the rough figures. Okay, random numbers and all. So this is all. This is where generally this calculations either it can be equal to, or it can be addition, it can be subtraction, it can be multiplication, or else it can be division, right? So divisions, right? So all these things are comes under the comments. Means all these are comes under the operators. Whatever the calculations are we going to use. And the same thing even applied even for true or false also, right? For example, you want to mention about, let's say, for example, 10 greater than or equal to, for example, right? So this is how it is greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, right? So this is where generally, because this is something which we normally comes whenever we are understanding the data type, which is called Boolean. Okay, this is where generally we call it as Boolean. It is means the same data types, because it can be a string value, which is a text value, or it can be an integer. I'm talking about numeric value, which doesn't have any float decimal symbols on that decimal value. So if it is a decimal value, then we call it as float. Otherwise, it can be a Boolean, right? So true or false values, right? So all these things are something comes under the syntaxes. So these are the standard and basic syntaxes which one must be required to learn. Yeah. Yes. So the one must be required to learn. So whenever you want to write any kind of Python programming, it's always important for you to learn, for us to learn about the basics of basic keywords, whatever we are going to use in while you are writing the program. Because when I'm writing to write the programs and all from next time on, from next week, next session onwards, so that it is easy for you to understand. Otherwise, what will happen just by simply if I'm writing the code, you just keep quiet, right? So you just use you see it with blank face, because what is that I'm going to write and all everything you don't know. So I'm just simply I'm writing and executing it, right? So you can't understand why is it happened, why he has mentioned the asterisk symbol, right? Or else octothorpe, why they have mentioned it, why he has mentioned why he has mentioned about the three why I have mentioned about three values or something like that. So which you don't know really. So that's the reason why you must be knowing about the keywords, which is more important. Apart from the keywords and all, we must be knowing about the syntaxes. Syntaxes give you a standard approach. While if you want to write any kind of code and all, these syntaxes are much useful and much important while you're writing the code. So this is all about the basics of Python programming and all. So next I'm going to start how to write the programming and all, so that you'll be understood well. So there are different programs which you need to learn. So that which I'm going to discuss on Monday session, all that. So if you have any questions, please go ahead.